Testing, testing. All right, we're good. Peace and blessings to the family. Peace and blessings to the family. My sincere apologies for the delay today. A bit of some technical difficulties, but welcome again to the weekly. Live with Minister Jabbar Wakil. Live with Minister Jabbar Wakil. Minister Jabbar will not be here at this time today, but I will be covering for him. So hopefully you will lend me your ears while I open up and close this week. And Minister Jabbar will be back with you next week with an exciting lecture coming up. And actually, it's the beginning of a lecture series that he will be presenting over a few weeks, where he will be answering the question, was there a John the Baptist preparing a way for a Messiah 2,000 years ago? If not, who fulfilled that role among us here in America? So, that's going to be very exciting. We look forward to do so with him, with that lecture. I can't wait to hear it. It might be one for the record books. So we will be looking forward to that. But this week we just want to chop it up a little bit, have some information here. As you can see, what I will be previewing shortly is part of the actual lawsuit that the Malcolm X family has filed in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. So we just want to go through that as we have been chronicling this particular news story recently here on Muhammad Speaks. If you haven't checked it out, check out our videos on the channel where we have discussed recently, and our latest video that has already run on the channel with regard to an awesome lecture by Dr. Wesley Muhammad and Dr. Mayat on her channel discussing his scholarly work around the assassination of Malcolm X. And we salute to the family, Dr. Mayat and Dr. Muhammad, for bringing you this information and keeping this fresh in the ears of the people, because what we want to do is ultimately get down to the truth. And here at MuhammadSpeaksNews.com, we want to bring you the truth as we see it, and news from all over the black world. And we are celebrating 65 years, 2025. We are a month away, and we'll be celebrating 65 years. Muhammad Speaks News paper started in 1960, and 2025 will be the 60th year of this newspaper. So we are an institution for black people all over the world, and we want to continue to do so for our people, and we will be bringing you the news on all of our platforms. If you haven't gone to our website, visit our website, www.muhammadspeaksnews.com, www.muhammadspeaksnews.com. Support black journalism, and we have subscription plans for $2, as low as $2 a month. And then we have a premium subscription, which would be $5 a month. Now, the deal is, if you pay at either of those tiers, the standard tier at $2 a month or the premium tier at $5 a month. If you pay for the entire year, you get a month free. So at the standard tier, $2 a month would be $24 for the year, but you would only have to pay $22 for the entire year. And that's unlimited access to Muhammad Speaks News, as well as discount on all of our store items. In addition to that, for the premium service, if you were to pay for the year times 12 at $5 would be $60, but you would only pay, if you paid one time for the entire year, $55, you would get premium access beyond that, and that would be access to the staff, and then full access to this upcoming series, Table Talks with the Honorable Silas Muhammad. Full preview on that. So please support Black journalism. Please give us the opportunity to continue to bring this this breaking news as we see fit. If you haven't subscribed to our social media platforms, Muhammad Speaks News on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, I'm forgetting, TikTok, and Instagram. So we're on 5 social media platforms. We are buzzing and we are pushing the news out for the entire Black world. We, as you see on this thumbnail there, we are the front row seat to the fall of America. The revolution will be televised on Muhammad Speaks News. If you haven't checked out the latest video with Dr. Wesley Muhammad, the spy who confirmed Malcolm X was on a kill list. That was the woman Marita Lorenz, who is a self-proclaimed confessed CIA agent who attempted to assassinate Fidel Castro on several occasions, who mothered a child by Fidel Castro, and confirmed by one of the generals at one of the CIA camps that Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, JFK, and his brother RFK were on a CIA kill list. So with this lawsuit that I'm going to be reading the beginning of the document to you, we're going to see that this is going to break open so much of the history that we have been denied, so much of the truth that we have not gotten, that we just had to assume that we knew everything about, especially considering the movie Malcolm X. But we're going to realize that we knew nothing about this to begin with. And a lot of that starts, in my mind, it starts with the work of Dr. Wesley Muhammad. So salute to Dr. Mayat for having the brother on her platform. Subscribe to their platforms, Dr. Mayat and Dr. Wesley Muhammad at Black God Protocol. In addition to that, we've been tracking the news of our sister who was murdered by the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office there in Springfield, Illinois, the murder of Sonia Massey. And we have a video there about the sister and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division opening up a probe, if you will, into that incident. We do have a bit of sad news that it appears that a judge has allowed the pretrial release of the sheriff that was responsible for it. So I will look into the documentation and be able to give you an update on the why of that. We need to know what was the justification of that. The purpose here at Muhammad Speaks is to inform. We are in the last days, and this is an information war. So we strongly advise our people to stay up to date and continue to seek the truth. And also in the vein of in the vein of Minister Malcolm X, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. We also on the Muhammad Speaks social media platforms, we will be updating the website. We produced the letter from the officer, just now deceased officer Raymond Wood of the NYPD, who allegedly wrote a letter prior to his death in 2011, confessing the NYPD being complicit in the assassination of Malcolm X. So we put the entire letter there. So we just want to bring you the facts as we see it, and then make our opinions and judgments from there, to ensure that we're constantly seeking out the truth and bringing the truth for our people, so they are informed. So salute to the family. Hopefully everyone had enjoyed their holiday weekend, and maybe you are rested and ready to get back to work. And salute to Assalamu alaikum, salute to all believers, and Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. And may you have a successful fast and rejuvenate and refreshen and spiritually ground yourself in this month. We as Lost Foundation of Islam believers practice Ramadan during the month of December every year. Salute to the royal family, the Honorable Silas Muhammad, and everyone. Salute to Sister Shirley. I see you in the chat there. Welcome. Thank you for always being with us. Support. If there's any way we can be of assistance to you, please shout us out. Let us know, and let us work together and collaborate. You and the awesome, amazing, strong human rights policy officers. Salute to Brother Ramzu Yunus, and please send my greetings to the honorable brother there, and the entire family there, and hopefully we can collaborate on something very soon. So again, please visit Muhammad Speaks website. Please subscribe. The website is refreshed every week, but we have updates throughout on our social media feeds daily. We have latest updates on Twitter. We do look forward to having a lot more content in production. So we encourage you to subscribe and grow with us. And we would like to also have an app in place. So we just want to jump right into the lawsuit documents that were filed on November 15th. And I won't go into the preliminary table of contents and other information, but maybe this is a great opportunity to kind of break it down and get a comprehensive overview of the entire scope of all of the conspiracies out there, all of the affidavits, all of the documents, because this looks to be very comprehensive in the way of compiling all of the information over the past now 60 years. February 19th, 1965 February 19th, 2025 will be 60 years. Brother passed away when he was a young man. At 39, he would be 99. So, his daughters are now in their 60s now. So we have to get to the bottom of this before we are able to bring about some type of closure. And I think this is just the beginning of everything. So with that said, we'll start with some of the introduction. We'll go through it. I also have some videos as well as I'll be compiling, because as we know, one of the way that we framed it is that it is believed that Malcolm X was ultimately assassinated because he wanted to take the struggle that black people, Afro-descendants in America were experiencing. He wanted to take it out of the civil rights context and make it and frame it as a human rights issue before the UN, United Nations. And it is believed that this is the reason why he was assassinated. So he made those remarks that on several occasions, and I will present those videos to you here, but 2 months later, he was assassinated. So it was around this time, 60 years ago, that he made those comments with regards to we should take our plight before the human rights body. And salute to the Honorable Silas Muhammad and the Honorable Attorney Harriet Abu Bakr and Madam Ida Hakim for all of the work they have done in taking our plight to the United Nations, paving the way for a lot of the work for Afro-descendants and people of African descent that are being done on the world stage right now. And this was some of the subsequent work that Malcolm was looking forward to. And here's what, and here's the claim that Malcolm was actually probably is most likely assassinated because this is what he wanted to do on a world stage. So the introduction of the lawsuit states, Malik El Shabazz, aka Malcolm X, aka Malcolm X Little, aka Malcolm X Al-Hajj, aka Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X's or plaintiff's decedent, was murdered on February 21st, 1965. He was one of the greatest black liberation leaders and public intellectuals of his generation. Malcolm X was a respected minister, teacher, human rights activist, and founding member of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, OAAU, and Muslim Mosque Incorporated. Excuse me. He fought against racism, colonialism, and oppression, and advocated for black people to engage in self-determination. This case is about the corrupt, unlawful, and unconstitutional relationship between law enforcement, including the defendants herein, and ruthless killers that went unchecked for many years and was actively concealed, condoned, protected, and facilitated by governmental agents, including, but not limited to, the defendants and their agencies, ultimately leading to the orchestrated murder of Malcolm X. As a direct result of the defendant's intentional bad faith, willful, wanton, reckless, unreasonable, and or deliberately indifferent acts and omissions, Malcolm X was deprived of his federal constitutional rights, was robbed of his life and freedom, and sustained severe physical, emotional, and monetary damages, including conscious physical pain and suffering. As a further direct result of the defendant's intentional, bad faith, willful, wanton, reckless, and or deliberately indifferent acts and omissions, the Shabazz family was robbed of their husband and father and deprived of his companionship and his financial, spiritual, emotional, and moral guidance and support, and sustained severe mental anguish and pecuniary losses caused by the death of their husband and father. 4. As part of the fraudulent concealment and cover-up, the FBI and NYPD defendants arrested several individuals who they alleged were involved in the assassination of Malcolm X, and these false arrests resulted in the malicious prosecution and wrongful conviction of 2 innocent individuals, Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam. This misconduct caused the incarceration and vilification of these 2 innocent men, and the suppression of the governmental role in the assassination of Malcolm X. 6. For decades, Malcolm X's wife, Betty Shabazz, the plaintiffs, and their entire family have suffered the pain of the unknown. They did not know who murdered Malcolm X, why he was murdered, the level of NYPD, FBI, and CIA orchestration, the identity of the governmental agents who conspired to ensure his demise, or who fraudulently covered up their role. 7. Plaintiffs and the Shabazz family have lived their lives without a father and grandfather, along with a cloud of suspicion surrounding his death. The damage caused to the Shabazz family is unimaginable, immense, and irreparable. 8. This claim is being advanced now because a reinvestigation coordinated by the efforts of the Cheney's office, the Innocence Project, and the New York County District Attorney's Office, DANI, Conviction Integrity Program recently uncovered the government's repeated failures, acts, and encouragement of the killers. 9. As a result, on November of 2021, New York County District Attorney Cyrus R. Vance took the unprecedented step of apologizing for serious, unacceptable violations of law and the public trust, and revealed a number of crucial NYPD and FBI documents that had been fraudulently concealed for more than 56 years. Nature of the action. 10. Plaintiffs come before the court advancing the following theories of liability against the defendants. First, the NYPD, in coordination with federal defendants, possessed knowledge of threats to Malcolm X's life prior to his assassination, yet failed to intervene on his behalf. Second, the NYPD, in coordination with federal defendants, intentionally removed their officers from inside the ballroom where Malcolm X was assassinated. Third, the NYPD, in coordination with federal defendants, caused the arrest of Malcolm X's security details days before the assassination to leave him more vulnerable. Fourth, the defendants had personnel, including undercover personnel, in the ballroom during the assassination, and they failed to protect Malcolm X from a known harm. Fifth, the federal defendants encouraged the assassination of Malcolm X. After the NYPD, in coordination with the federal defendants, caused Malcolm X's death, they engaged in a decades-long effort to cover up their malfeasance. This cover-up was fraudulent and denied the plaintiffs access to the courts. 11. Plaintiffs bring this action to recover compensatory and punitive damages and an award of attorney's fees and costs for violations of plaintiffs' rights secured by 42 United States Code subsection 1981, 1983, 1985, 1986 by the 1st, 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution through the Federal Tort Claims Act and by New York State law. So those are the initial claims in the introduction to the initial claims. I will not go through the jurisdiction. This will also be posted on the Muhammad Speaks website, so stay tuned. Salute to the family. Also, if you're in there, please like, share, and subscribe. Please drop it in the drop a salute in the chat, and support Black News and support us so we can bring you more of this. So, notice of claim. Again, we're reading through the document of the Malcolm X $200 million lawsuit brought by the family against the NYPD, the FBI, and the CIA. Notice of claim. 14. This action is commenced 59 years after the assassination of Malcolm X because, following his death, defendants knowingly and fraudulently withheld information from the Shabazz plaintiffs. Defendants acted in, and defendant is the United States government, CIA, FBI, NYPD. Defendants acted in a concerted and fraudulent manner to prevent the Shabazz plaintiffs from becoming aware of their conduct, omissions, and actions, as well as the identity of the undercover informants and the planning of Malcolm X's assassination. This was not random. This is me talking. This is not random. This was planned. And there were undercover informants also. 15. This action is timely brought due to the continuing fraudulent concealment by the DOJ, Department of Justice, FBI, CIA, the NYPD, and their named and unnamed defendant agents of direct evidence that they conspired to and executed their plan to assassinate Malcolm X and then covered it up. 16. In February 2023, plaintiffs presented timely notices of tort claims pursuant to, this is the Federal Tort Claims Act, well, those subsections, and all applicable federal regulations, giving notice of the wrongful death caused by the acts or omissions of the defendants, while acting within the scope of their office or employment with the United States of America under circumstances in which the United States, if a private person, would be liable to the plaintiffs in accordance with the laws of the state of New York. More than 6 months have passed from the claims presentation to the United States. Plaintiffs deem the agency's failure to render a final disposition of their claims of constructive denial pursuant to Article 28 of the United States Code, subsection 2675. 17. On August 29, 2024, Ilyasa Shabazz was duly appointed as administrator of the estate of Malcolm X. On October 4th, 2024, plaintiffs filed a notice of claim against the city of New York on behalf of the estate asserting inter alia wrongful death. 19. February 21st, 2023, plaintiff Ilyasa Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the city of New York seeking damages for a wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. So these are all the times that the family has submitted this, and salute to them for repeatedly having the determination and the grit to stick this out. 20. On February 21st, 2023, March 24, 2023, plaintiff Ilyasa Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the state of New York seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. 21. On February 21st, 2023, plaintiff Ilyasa Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the USA, CIA, FBI, and DOJ seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. 22. On March 3rd, 2023, and March 7th, 2023, plaintiff Gamila Lumumba Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the city of New York seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. On March 3rd, 2023, March 7th, 2023, and March 24th, 2023, plaintiff Gamila Lumumba Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the state of New York seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. 24. On March 3rd, 2023, plaintiff Camila Lumumba Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the USA, CIA, FBI, and DOJ and seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. This is going on, isn't it? 25. On March 27, 2023, plaintiff Camila Lumumba Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the CIA, seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. 26. On March 3rd, 2023, March 7th, 2023, plaintiff Malak Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the city of New York, seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. 2027. On March 3rd, 2023, March 7th, 2023, March 24th, 2023, plaintiff Malak Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the state of New York, seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. On March 28, on March 3rd, 2023, plaintiff Malak Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the USA, CIA, FBI, DOJ, seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. 29. On April 25th, 2023, plaintiff Malak Shabazz filed a notice of claim against the CIA, again, seeking damages for the wrongful death of Malcolm X, her father. 30. As such, plaintiffs have satisfied all conditions precedent to the institutions of this action and or such conditions have been waived. The parties. Plaintiff. 31. At all times relevant herein, Malcolm X was a resident of the city of Elmhurst, New York, until his assassination on February 21st, 1965. Malcolm X was 39 years old and a black citizen of the United States at the time of his death. 32. Betty Shabazz, his wife, was pregnant with twin girls. He would unfortunately never meet. Malcolm X also left behind 4 young daughters, aged 1, 2, 4, and 6. 33. Plaintiffs Ilyasa Shabazz, Camila Lumumba Shabazz, Malak Shabazz are daughters of Malcolm X. 34. Plaintiff Ilyasa Shabazz's duly appointed administrator. I have to look up what DBN means. Of the estate of Malcolm X. Plaintiffs are all residents and citizens of the United States. 36. The United States of America, United States Department of Justice. These are actually who is actually being sued. So it's the U.S., the DOJ, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the New York Police Department, together with their leaders, agents, and informants, were aware of and involved in the assassination of Malcolm X and knowingly failed to prevent it or to protect Malcolm X from being assassinated. 37. The following named defendants on behalf of and in furtherance of the surreptitious, illegal, and unconstitutional aims of their respective governmental agencies together with named co-conspirators undercover within the Nation of Islam and others as yet still unknown, acted individually, jointly, and in conspiracy to proximately cause, by assassination, Malcolm X's wrongful death, failed to intervene to prevent the assassination, and or fraudulently covered up their roles in said wrongful death. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, FBI Assistant Director William C. Sullivan, FBI Chief of Racial Intelligence George C. Moore, former Deputy Director of Plans of the CIA Richard Magara Helms, FBI agents Arthur Fulton, August Misek, Dale Sutton, and Stephen Edwards, FBI informant provocateurs John Ali Simmons and Abdul Basit Naim, FBI informant Ronald Timberlake, CIA Director Richard Helms, the City of New York, NYPD past commissioners Vincent Lyons Broderick, Howard R. Leary, NYPD detectives, investigators, and supervisors Ferdinand Caballero, Francis Cilento, William E. Confray, John J. Conroy, Thomas Casumano, Winston D. DeVerge, Sanford Garelick, Joseph Iacovelli, John J. Keeley, Thomas C. Renagan, Francis J. M. Robb, James Russian, Howard G. Schetzel, Francis M. Sullivan, Warren Taylor, Patrick J. Twomey, Ernest Vose, Michael Willis, NYPD bossy agents, which we will go into this at some point down the line, and supervisors Anthony Tony Bouza, Jerry Fulcher, William Bill Knapp, Bernard F. Mulligan, Eugene A. Roberts, Henry Suarez, Theodore Theologus, Raymond A. Wood, whose letter that we put in the community tab and all across our social media today, Anthony Olaswitz, John and Jane Doe's 1 through 50, inclusive, who are co-conspiring officials, agents, and informants, pardon me, I went too fast, not presently known to plaintiff, and co-conspirators William Bradley, Leon Davis, Talmadge Hare, Benjamin Thomas, and Wilbur McKinley. Defendants acted in a concerted and fraudulent manner to prevent Malcolm X's family from becoming aware of their conduct, omissions, actions, and failures to act, as well as the identity of undercover informants, agents, and provocateurs, and their planning of Malcolm X's assassination. The NOI involvement and participation in the assassination resulting from the urging, threats, manipulation, facilitation, and or subversive use of informant, agent, provocateurs, and undercover agents by agents, supervisors, high levels officials, and leaders of the FBI and NYPD. So the extent that the nation was involved, to the degree that they were actually infiltrated by the government. It's there, number 39. Number 40. Let me go back to the section there real quick. Federal defendants. Let me go back to see the chat. Peace and love to the family. Peace and bless to the family. Stay tuned. Keep liking. Keep sharing. Keep subscribing. Drop a note. Federal defendants. Number 40. Defendant. The United States of America, hereinafter the United States, is a defendant in this action pursuant to the FTCA, Federal Tort Claims Act, Article 28, subsection 1346. The relevant conduct of the United States arises from the acts and or omissions of employees and federal agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Justice Department, and the Central Intelligence Agency that, under the laws of the state of New York, on the negligent or otherwise wrongful acts or omission of individual agents of the FBI while acting within the scope of their office or employment of the FBI and or pursuant to U.S. Code 28, defendant United States was at all times material to this complaint, the employer of the individual federal defendants. 41. If defendant United States were a private person, it would be liable to plaintiffs in accordance with the laws of the state of New York, the place where the actions and omissions at issue herein occurred and should have did not occur. Defendant J. Edgar Hoover. Defendant J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover was the creator, former director, and final policymaker for the FBI until he died in 1972. At all times relevant to this action, Defendant Hoover individually and by his agents, servants, and employees was responsible for the operation, maintenance, and control of the FBI. Defendant Hoover oversaw the selection, training, supervision, and discipline of FBI agents from 1956 to 1972, including at the time of the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X. He participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and/or knew about it happening and did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Hoover, by and through his estate, is sued in his individual capacity as conspirator with the NYPD defendants. 43. Defendant William C. Sullivan. Between 1969 and 1970, his assistant director of the FBI in charge of Domestic Intelligence Division and a primary architect of the counterintelligence program COINTELPRO. At all times relevant to this action, Defendant Sullivan was responsible for the operation, maintenance, and control of COINTELPRO. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, family. We can go down. The selection, training, supervision, and discipline of COINTELPRO agents from 1961 to 1970, including at the time of the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X. He participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and/or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Sullivan, by and through his estate, is sued in his individual capacity as a conspirator with the NYPD defendants. Defendant George C. Moore was the head of the FBI's Racial Intelligence Section, and as such was responsible for the COINTELPRO operations directed against black leaders and organizations. He participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and/or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Moore, by and through his estate, is sued in his individual capacity as a conspirator with the NYPD defendants. Defendant Richard McGarrah Helms was the former Deputy Director of Plans of the CIA and former Director of the CIA from 1966 to 1973. He participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Helms, by and through his estate, is sued in his individual capacity as conspirator with the NYPD defendants. Defendant Arthur Fulton was an agent for the FBI. He participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and/or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Fulton is sued in his individual capacity as a conspirator with the NYPD defendants. Defendants August Meshach, Dale Sutton, and Stephen Edwards were FBI agents who participated in the cover-up of the assassination of Malcolm X. They are sued in their individual capacities as a conspirator with the NYPD defendants. Number 48, Defendant John Ali Simmons, Ali, also known as John Ali and John X, was the former National Secretary for the Nation of Islam and an FBI informant provocateur assigned to infiltrate the NOI at the behest of the FBI. He participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and/or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. He is sued in his individual capacity as a conspirator with the NYPD defendants. 49. Defendant Abdul Basit Naim was, upon information and belief, an FBI informant provocateur assigned to infiltrate the NOI at the behest of the FBI. He participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and/or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. He is sued in his individual capacity as a conspirator with the NYPD defendants. Defendant Ronald Timberlake, as was an informant for the FBI who participated in the cover-up of the assassination of Malcolm X. He was sued in his individual capacity and as a conspirator with the NYPD defendants. Defendant John Doe 1 through 20 are federal agents, informants, and provocateurs employed by the FBI and the CIA whose identities and actions in the assassination and cover-up have heretofore been and continue to be suppressed by themselves, by defendants Hoover, Sullivan, Moore, Fulton, Helms, Edwards, Sutton, Ali, Timberlake, Naim, and other leaders and agents and informants of the FBI and CIA. 52. All of the actions taken by the federal defendants were undertaken under federal law as well as with co-conspirators acting under state law. Defendant City of New York. 53. Defendant the City of New York. The city at all times were herein mentioned was a municipal corporation. That is a political subdivision of the state of New York. Was the employer of the individual police defendants and is and was at all times relevant herein responsible for the policies, practice, customs of the New York City Police Department, NYPD. All of the acts of the city, its agents, and employees, including the individual NYPD defendants named herein, were carried out under the color of state law. 55. The city was at all times relevant. The public employer of the individual NYPD defendants and those 21 through 50 inclusive, and is illegally responsible for torts these defendants committed within the scope of their employment under color of law. The city is also obligated under the law and by contract to indemnify and defend the individual defendants named herein. 56. Defendant City is also sued for the deprivation of civil rights by the failure of these governmental entities to properly train, hire, supervise, and discipline their law enforcement employees and through respondeat superior for the wrongful conduct of their public employee agents. Former NYPD Commissioner defendants. 57. Defendant Vincent Lyons Broderick, a former NYPD Commissioner, was an employee and agent of the NYPD acting within the scope of his employment and under color of law as the final policymaker for the city with respect to NYPD supervision and discipline from 1965 to 1966, including during the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X. At all times relevant to this complaint, he is responsible for the policies, practices, supervision, implementation, and conduct of all NYPD matters, and responsible for the appointment, training, supervision, discipline, and conduct of all NYPD members of service, including the highest-ranking NYPD personnel. He participated in the planning of the assassination of Malcolm X and or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Broderick is being sued in his individual capacity. 58. Defendant Howard R. Leary, a former NYPD commissioner, was an employee and agent of the NYPD acting within the scope of his employment under the color of law as the final policymaker for the city with respect to NYPD supervision and discipline from 1966 to 1970, including during the investigation into the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X. At all times relevant to this complaint, he was responsible for the policies, practices, supervisions, implementation, and conduct of all NYPD matters, and responsible for the appointment, training, supervision, discipline, and conduct of all the NYPD members of service, including the highest-ranking NYPD personnel. He participated in the cover-up and assassination of Malcolm X. Defendant Leary is sued in his individual capacity. NYPD bossy defendants. Defendant Anthony Tony Buzza is a former NYPD officer and member of the New York City Police Department Bureau of Special Services and Investigations, BOSSI. At all relevant times, he was duly appointed and acted officer of the NYPD, employed by defendant city, holding ranks that included lieutenant from 1957 to 1965. Defendant Posse acted in the conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X and or in the assassination investigation under color of law, and within the scope of his employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and the city. Defendant Buzza participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and or did not act to prevent it, and or participated in its subsequent cover-up. Defendant Buzza, by and through his estate, is sued in his individual capacity. Number 60. Defendant Jerry Fulcher. Fulcher is a former NYPD officer and bossy member. Bureau of Special Service Investigations. At all relevant times, he was a duly appointed and acting officer of the NYPD employed by defendant city. That's New York City. Defendant Fulcher acted in a conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X and or the assassination investigation under color of law and within the scope of his employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and the city. Defendant Fulcher participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Fulcher is sued in his individual capacity. 61. Defendant William Bill Knapp is a former NYPD officer and bossy member. That's the division in NYPD. At all times, he was a duly appointed and acting officer of the NYPD employed by defendant city, holding ranks that included Deputy Chief Inspector. Defendant Knapp acted in the conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X and or in the assassination investigation under color of law and within the scope of his employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, practices, and the state of New York and the city. Defendant Knapp participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Knapp is being sued in his individual capacity. 62. Defendant Bernard F. Mulligan is a former NYPD officer and bossy member. At all times, he was a duly appointed and acting officer of the NYPD employed by the city, holding ranks that included lieutenant. Defendant Mulligan acted in the conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X and or in the assassination investigation under color of law and within the scope of his employment under the statutes, ordinance, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and the city. Defendant Mulligan participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Mulligan is sued in his individual capacity. Defendant Gene A. Roberts is a former NYPD officer and bossy member. At all times, he was employed by the city. Defendant Roberts acted in the conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X and or in the assassination investigation under color of law and within the scope of his employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and city. Defendant Roberts participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. He is sued by and through his estate in his individual capacity. 64. Defendants Henry Suarez, Theodore Ted Theologus, and Tony Ulasowicz were former NYPD officers and boss members. At all relevant times, they were duly appointed and acting officers of the NYPD employed by the defendant city, holding ranks that included detective. These defendants acted... Sorry, I lost it here. Bear with me. These defendants acted in the conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X and or in the assassination investigation under the color of law within the scope of their employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and the city. These defendants participated in the assassination and or did not act to prevent it, and participated in the subsequent cover-up. These defendants are sued in their individual capacities. Defendant Raymond A. Wood, whose letter you will see on all of our social media platforms posted today, is a former NYPD officer and bossy member. At all relevant times, he was employed by Defendant City. Defendant Wood acted in conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X and in the assassination investigation under color of law and within the scope of his employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and the city. Defendant Wood participated in the assassination of Malcolm X and or did not act to prevent it and participated in the subsequent cover-up. Defendant Wood, by and through his estate, is sued in his individual capacity. Defendant John and Jane Doe's 21 through 35 are NYPD bossy leaders, agents, officers, informants, provocateurs employed by the NYPD who were acting under color of law and within the scope of their employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and the city, and whose identities and actions in the assassination of Malcolm X and or the failure to prevent it and its cover-up have heretofore been and continue to be suppressed by said defendant Doe's and by the NYPD and federal defendants named herein. NYPD investigators. Defendants Ferdinand Rocky Caballero, William E. Confrey, John J. Conroy, Thomas T. Cusimano, Winston W. DeVergi, Joseph Iacobelli, all these Italian names, John J. Keeley, James Russian, Howard Schaetzl, Warren Taylor, Patrick Tuomi, Ernest Vose, Michael Willis, and former officers of the NYPD at all relevant times. These defendants were duly appointed and acting officers of the NYPD employed by Defendant City holding ranks that included detective. 68. Defendant Francis Frank Salento is a former officer of the NYPD. At all relevant times, he was duly appointed an acting officer of the NYPD employed by Defendant City, holding ranks that included sergeant. Defendant Sanford Garelick is a former officer of the NYPD. At all relevant times, he was duly appointed an acting officer of the NYPD employed by Defendant City, holding ranks that included Chief Inspector. 70. Defendant Thomas Renaga is a former officer of the NYPD. At all relevant times, he was a duly appointed and acting officer of the NYPD employed by Defendant City, holding ranks that included Assistant Chief Inspector. 71. Defendant Francis Frank J. M. Robb is a former officer of the NYPD. At all relevant times, he was a duly appointed and acting officer of the NYPD employed by Defendant City, holding ranks that included Inspector. Defendant Francis Frank Sullivan is a former officer of the NYPD. At all relevant times, he was a duly appointed and acting officer of the NYPD employed by Defendant City, holding ranks that included Lieutenant. 73. At all times, these NYPD defendants, investigators, detectives, and supervisors acted under color of law and within the scope of their employment under the statutes, ordinance, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and city. These defendants participated in the conspiracy to cover up the true nature of the assassination of Malcolm X. These defendants are being sued in their individual capacity. 74. Defendant John and Jane Doe's 36 through 50 were NYPD leaders, agents, officers, investigators, and informants employed by the NYPD who were acting under color of law within the scope of their employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and city, whose identities and actions in the cover-up of the assassination of Malcolm X have heretofore been and continue to be suppressed by themselves and by the NYPD and FBI defendants named herein. John Doe defendants. The true names and capacities of the defendants named herein as Does 1 through 50 are unknown to plaintiffs, who therefore sue said defendants by such fictitious names as a result of pending discovery from defendants herein upon information and belief. Some or all of Does 1 through 50 in this action will be identified as time proceeds. Plaintiffs will seek to amend this complaint to show the true names and capacities when they have been ascertained. 76. The same set of allegations and general facts alleged herein will apply to Doe defendants in terms of their culpability and amenability to suit under the legal throes expressed. Plaintiffs are informed and believed and based thereon allege that Does 1 through 50 were officers, informers, and supervisors in the FBI, CIA, and or NYPD who acted in the conspiracy to assassinate Malcolm X and or failed to prevent the assassination and or participated in the assassination cover-up under the cover of law and within the scope of their employment under the statutes, ordinances, regulations, policies, customs, and practices of the state of New York and the city, and who participated in this misconduct alleged herein, but whose actual names plaintiffs have been unable to ascertain, notwithstanding reasonable efforts to do so. 77. Plaintiffs are informed and believed and based thereon allege that at all times herein mentioned, each of the defendants, including Doe defendants, were the agents of one or more of the other defendants, and were at all times herein mentioned acting within the scope of such agency. Defendant Does 1 through 50 sued herein, herein in their individual capacities. On information and belief, all defendants and residents and citizens of the United States. Oh, here we go. Here's the good part. Co-conspirators within the NOI. 79. NOI Lieutenant William Bradley. NOI members Leon Davis, Talmadge Hare, Benjamin Thomas, Wilbur McKinley are co-conspirators who acted together and in conspiracy with some of the named NYPD, FBI, CIA defendants to assassinate Malcolm X, and all of them except Hare also acted together and in conspiracy with the named FBI, NYPD, CIA defendants to cover up their roles in the assassination. So, I am going to stop there, but we are going to save this for an entire another. This can be really strung out, and you can do like deep dives 10 times over. I mean, and we haven't even, this is just a complaint. We haven't even got to the trial yet. This is monumental. This is big, and I was having a conversation with some brothers earlier today. This is just a micro plot in a much larger plot. So stay tuned to Muhammad Speaks newspaper to stay up to date on this case as it develops. And as we haven't even gotten, we're only less than a third of the way through this document, this actual complaint. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go through it in the future. You see, we have some footage of Malcolm X running in the background there. He is one of the, he's someone that pushed the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. As you can see, we've been around 65 years. and you can't see the entire banner behind him, but he's saying subscribe to Muhammad Speaks newspaper, which we want you to do now. So please go to our website, www.muhammadspeaksnews.com. Subscribe, only $2 a month. $2 a month to support black journalism so we can continue with this series and continue to bring this black news as we see it. What I want to do is cue up a video here because, again, as I stated in the beginning, it is believed that Malcolm X was assassinated because he wanted to take the nation, take the plight of black people internationally on the world stage. So bear with me while I cue this video up. So we want to bring this to you because it is we want to present the evidence as we see fit, and based on that belief, we can hear in his own words regarding the United Nations. This is the first of two clips.
Malcolm, what is your purpose here? Well, my purpose here is to remind the African heads of state that there are 22 million of us in America who are also of African descent, and to remind them also that we are the victims of America's colonialism or American imperialism, and that our problem is not an American problem, it's a human problem. It's not a Negro problem, it's a problem of humanity. It's not a problem of civil rights, but a problem of human rights.
And what do you hope for from this conference?
Well, we hope to bring pressure upon them, or rather we hope to impress upon them the importance of their bringing pressure and world opinion upon the United States to take some meaningful effort to solve our problem in America. We want them to help us get our problem before the United Nations and charge America with violating our human rights in the same way that South Africa is charged with violating the human rights of our people in that area.
And what sort of reaction have you been getting from the African leaders?
Well, I've gotten a good reaction, a very sympathetic reaction, and an understanding reaction. Many of them have been misinformed by the American government into thinking that black people in America don't identify with Africa, and therefore they've restrained themselves from voicing their interest in our problem. But I've impressed upon them that our problem is their problem, as well as their problems are our problem.
Malcolm, what is your purpose here?
Well, my purpose here is to
I know, sorry, I was talking on mute, but we have seen here that Malcolm said it in his own words. Our plight is a human rights plight. Our plight is that for the international world, not to negotiate on a civil rights basis within the United States. Because as you can see in that letter that I read on this channel from the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office on behalf of Sonia Massey for that probe, this Civil Rights Division only does probes on the basis that it benefits the United States. So we can see that we're never given a fair shake as it relates to the civil rights realm, and it seems like they always get absorbed by the United States, or they're even funded by the United States in many cases. Whereas international human rights provides more exposure of the United States and gets more eyes and more objective eyes, and not someone that's constantly trying to placate us and give us trinkets in exchange for basically absolutely nothing. So I want to cue up this second video. I won't be long, and I'm going to try to be strong and close this out. And if Mr. Jabbar, you hear this, we miss you, and we look forward to getting you back here next week on this on the regularly scheduled Sunday meeting here. But let me cue this video up here, because we got to get to the bottom of this. I have a strong feeling that this thing is about to explode based on this information. Just when you thought this thing was over and there was nothing left to say about Malcolm X, here we are. So here's the second clip. And I think this is the clip that the attorney at the press conference was referring to 2 months before he passed away. So it would be about this time 60 years ago.
In America has been confined to what has been projected to the public as a civil rights struggle. And in that context, it has remained a domestic problem. It has remained within the jurisdiction of the United States. And as such, it has been impossible for the Afro-Americans or American Negroes to try and enlist the support of other dark-skinned people who are being oppressed the world over in that struggle. And the difference now in the direction that the struggle is taking from the direction that the struggle has been going in the past, there are many of our people who are thinking more deeply and more broadly and are beginning to see the importance of lifting it out of the national context or out of the domestic context or beyond the jurisdiction of the United States government. And the only way this can be done is by internationalizing the problem and putting it at a level where it can be taken into the United Nations, and then all of the other independent nations on this earth can involve themselves in our struggle and support us. And the only way by which this can be done, instead of it being called civil rights in the future, we're going to have to label it a human rights struggle, or the struggle for human rights. And as such, we can then take it into the United Nations through the avenues that have been set up by the United Nations Commission on Human Rights. We can take our problem before the United Nations in the same manner that the problem of South Africa, Angola, Mozambique, Hungary, the Arab refugee problem, it becomes a world problem. And as a world problem, then the Afro-American or the so-called Negroes full results, because it's not left up to the one who's responsible for it anymore, but it's put at a level where the whole can see that our plight is wrong. It stood in our path in the past. It also makes a difference in the leadership. Those who have been posing as leaders of our people in America in the past, they can pose on this local stage where Uncle Sam is the master of the show and can prop them up and make them look good or make them look better than they actually are by giving them token gains and building them up an image. But when they step onto the international stage or the world stage, then Uncle Sam can't prop them up anymore. And their ability or lack of ability becomes exposed. And if they can lead us forward, they remain leaders. But if they can't, then they have to step aside, and more qualified and bona fide leaders step up from the masses of our people, and then we get faster progress, we get more results. The Afro-American or American Negro intellectual perhaps permitted himself to be used in a way that wasn't really beneficial to the overall Afro-American struggle. But I think today these intellectuals have begun to undertake a new appraisal of the problem, are looking at it as it actually is, and are beginning to see it more in the international context and the relation that it has with the African struggle. And the African intellectual is beginning to look at the problem in the African context and see that what might be good in one country, in order for it to be used in another country, has to be rearranged. You take African socialism. Many of the African intellectuals that have analyzed the approach of socialism are beginning to see where the African has to use a form of socialism that fits into the African context, whereas the form that is used in a European country might be good for that particular European country. It doesn't fit as well into the African context. So I think the African intellectual is making that contribution, and he's making it well.
There you have it. And before we close out, I just want to create synergy with the work of Malcolm X and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is Muhammad Speaks News. This is a publication of the Lost Foundation of Islam for 65 years. This is Muhammad Speaks. And there's a misnomer that the international work of Malcolm X is somehow divorced from that of the Nation of Islam. And this is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his own words from Message to the Black Man. And this is chapter 108, The True Solution. Will civil rights solve the so-called Negro's problem? By no means will it, or anything else except Allah, solve our problem. Civil rights, according to the English dictionary, means the equal rights of a human being on a level with any other human being. These rights are limited here in America. First and foremost, the so-called Negro needs human rights, which will warrant his recognition as a human being by his slave masters. This also gives him universal rights, the same equal rights as any other human being. Will the so-called Negro enjoy the equal rights that American white citizens enjoy, or will he continue to wait patiently for civil rights to come within 100 years from now? I am convinced that neither a white nor a Negro government will be here 100 years from now to witness what will take place. There is nothing good coming from the white man for the so-called Negro's future. I have repeatedly warned you that there is no justice for you in the white man. The Civil Rights Bill was made up by white people and passed by white people. Even at this late date, there is no indication that the white man will or even desires to treat the so-called Negroes equally. It is not his nature to treat you or even his kind right. It cannot be done. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., the 1964 Nobel Peace Prize winner, would have honored himself and his people if he had refused the medal. The money could have been accepted since his people need it. Even if he did not need it himself, there are poor among his followers who really need financial help. He won neither peace nor justice for his people. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. wants brotherhood with white America for himself and his followers. As reported here, the Nobel Peace Prize was conferred on him in Norway, Reverend King sharply warned in St. Paul's Cathedral that a doctrine of black supremacy was a great danger as one of white supremacy. He followed up with the words, "Unless men and nations live together, they will perish together." Then came the statement according to the paper. Too many of our white brothers are only concerned with their economical problems, their social status, and their political powers and their so-called way of life. Of his own people, he said, "We must not seek to rise from a position of disadvantage to one of advantage, substituting injustice of one type for that of another." End quote. This is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad speaking in Message to the Black Man again. I have never heard of any such talk coming from a leader's mouth in all my life. If a man is not going to rise from a position of disadvantage, why is he preaching for the passage of the Civil Rights Bill for his people? No wonder he had the privilege of going into a cathedral where no so-called Negro had ever stood in the pulpit. He is ignorant, preaching for brotherhood of white people and destruction of his own people, because brotherhood with white people means the destruction of black people. According to the Bible, he preaches from it. You should not make friends or have friendship with the wicked if you are righteous, and you should not worship the devils. Most certainly, the white man is the devil. His own Bible teaches him that. He said, God is not interested in the freedom of white, black, or yellow man, but in the freedom of the whole human race. This is the messenger quoting Martin Luther King. The end quote. Here the messenger speaks again. Here, again, the Reverend shows that he has not studied the scripture. For it surely preaches you that the world has been under the rule of Satan, the devil, for 6,000 years, and how separation must come between God's people and the devil so that the righteous can survive. This kind of talk, coming from a theological college graduate, is almost unbelievable. How many American so-called Negroes would like to follow a man who speaks like one who cares nothing about them? Reverend King has made it clear that he never wants the black man to rule because he knows it will be just as dangerous as white supremacy. Quote. This shows that all black people should disregard anything that a man like that says. He disagreed that his people should ever rise from the level of a subjugated people of slavery. I would like to ask the Reverend under whom he would like to live, since he condemns the ability of both for the supreme character of ruling the nations of the earth. Excuse me, and enjoyed for the last 4,000 years. He wants to be a brother to the white man and wants the black man to be like the white man. This is continued enslavement. Excuse me. Bear with me, family. We are almost done. It's a bit dusty out here, a bit warm, so get the cough a little bit. I'm continuing reading from Message to the Black Man. He wants to be a brother to the white man and wants the black man to be like the white man. This is continued enslavement. I am just wondering how many followers he has after his last statement. The messenger was snapping. But this is a serious topic here. Talk about the lives of our people, right? And you can't play with this thing. This brother, black man, white man, and no disrespect to Dr. King, he just didn't know. But if you don't know, you should go to the people that know. I heard the Reverend King say on television that he wanted white people to be his brothers and not his brothers-in-law. He loves our enemies. Any black person who believes in himself should not go near or even listen to this type of teaching. It is really awful to hear a man say such things when he has been beaten and thrown into jail seeking the right to exercise the rights of a member of his own black nation. So, in view of such statements, Reverend King is of no good among black people. What are you going to do? Are you going to follow such teachings, or will you turn around and join onto your own kind? I cannot see, nor can I understand why the so-called American Negro is so blind, deaf, and dumb. We have the right to live and do for ourselves and our children. We do not want any more promises, and we cannot get along in peace with the universally known enemy of black men. Since Allah has revealed the very nature of the Caucasian race, that they are devils, there is no way of changing them to be anything other than that which they are. End of the chapter, True Solutions. So, we see kind of the father of this is human rights issue, not civil rights issue. Teacher and the student right here, am I doing it right? On the screen here, Malcolm, right? These are the words of the messenger himself. He was hardcore about you don't play with our plight, right? So here we are 60 years later. Everything the messenger said, right? Empty promises. He knew this 60 years ago. And now, thank goodness, 60 years later, with the loss of Kamala, maybe we can finally see that not even the Democratic Party can offer us hope, right? We've seen all the black mayors, the congressmen, the governors, the senators, the first black, right? We've seen it for 60 years, right? The civil rights leaders got to live their fantasy of brotherhood with these people. Now, will we finally see that we must go be self-determined, right? And go for ourselves and go to the United Nations as a people and stop negotiating with these people at their negotiating table. With that said, we will continue to beat this horse here at Muhammad Speaks. I got a little passionate there because the messenger was going in. I love it. So pardon me for getting a little emotional there. But, man, that was tough, and we had 60 years. Like, I'll be 50 in February. We should have been, for those of you who are Gen Xers born after the death of Malcolm X or were children around that time, you should have grown up in the international movement. Now, we're here 60 years later trying to drag ourselves there and our people there. We should have been well underway with self-determination. Ain't that right, Sister Shirley, if you're still there? Right? So now we have to pick up the pieces because people in before we were even born couldn't even get it together. No disrespect, all love, but I hope this dream of all this blackness. You got your black president, you got your black senators, you got all your black politicians, black. Good. Are you satisfied now? We're not getting anything from it. Good. So let's move forward. Let's go internationally. Let's take our place on the world stage. Brother Jabari, we miss you. We welcome you back next week. I'm Brother Afro Descendant Ali, signing out. Assalamu alaikum. Happy Ramadan. Salute to the family.